Hello, everybody. This is DJ Gerry. You know, the Beatles are perhaps the world's most cherished and favorite group of all time. And since their official breakup in 1970, fans have been aching to see the Fab Four reunite. Today, we are going to go in search of Beatles reunions and collaborations. A historic concert took place on December 15th, 1969. It was a charity event for UNICEF called Peace and Love for Christmas. George Harrison and John Lennon played live together on a stage for the first time since the final Beatles concert at Candlestick Park in San Francisco in 1966. In November of 1970, former Beatle George Harrison released one of his best albums ever called All Things Must Pass. This three-record set featured guest drummer Ringo Starr. On August 1st, 1971, George Harrison assembled a star-studded benefit concert for Bangladesh. The event brought George Harrison and Ringo Starr together on a concert stage for the first time since 1966. In the rock year 1971, when tensions were high between John Lennon and Paul McCartney, John Lennon invited George Harrison to record the song How Do You Sleep? This song featured George Harrison on slide guitar, and it was a scathing criticism of Paul McCartney.
The only thing you done was yesterday.
In 1973, just 3 short years after the breakup of the Beatles, Ringo Starr went in to record his third studio album. And this album is noted for being the only project in which all 4 Beatles collaborated between the band's breakup in 1970 and the murder of John Lennon in 1980. Although they didn't work on the project simultaneously at any point, they were all featured on his album. On May 7th, 1973, George Harrison and Ringo Starr come together again to collaborate on George's album called Living in a Material World. In the spring of 1974, John Lennon was producing his great friend Harry Nilsson's album called Pussycats at the Burbank Studios. Well, guess who just dropped by? Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney and John Lennon got together to record several unreleased rock and roll standards, including Lucille.
Lucille, come back where you belong.
And Stand By Me.
When the night has come.
This collaboration between Paul McCartney and John Lennon gave fans hope that the Beatles could finally put aside their differences and consider a full-blown Beatles reunion. Well, all 4 Beatles came together again in 1976 to work on and record on Ringo Starr's 5th album called Rotogravure. It seems that Ringo Starr was the catalyst that could bring all four Beatles together. Unfortunately, they didn't play on any one song. They played together and separately on different songs on the album. 7 months after Saturday Night Live producer Lorne Michaels offered the Beatles $3,000 to reunite on the show, George Harrison tried to take him up on it. Lennon said that he and McCartney were going to take a cab there, but they were just a little too tired, so George Harrison showed up on November 20th, 1976, in an episode that featured Harrison as musical guest as he showed off his comedic chops in a sketch. Harrison cynically confronted him about the money, only to be denied. George said, "I've come all this way." Harrison deadpans, and he said, "That's $3,000, that's the deal." And Lorne Michaels told him that all four Beatles would have had to show up to share the $3,000. But after Harrison called the NBC studios chintzy, Michaels then offered the quiet Beatle $250 for saying the catchphrase, "Live from New York, it's Saturday night." In one of the show's greatest musical highlights, musical legend Paul Simon and George Harrison collaborated on gorgeous versions of 60s classics, including Here Comes the Sun and Homeward Bound. George Harrison's first wife, Pattie Boyd, was the inspiration for two of rock music's most iconic love songs. First, the Beatles' Something, and Derek and the Dominoes' Layla. She was also the catalyst for the first Beatles concert reunion. That's right, Pattie Boyd, the ex-wife of George Harrison, married former Beatles best friend Eric Clapton on May 19th, 1979 at his English estate. Harrison brought Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr to play an impromptu musical set at the wedding reception. Those songs included renditions of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Get Back, and Lottie Miss Claudie. In the spring of 1981, just months after the tragic assassination of John Lennon, surviving Beatles George, Paul, and Ringo sang tribute to their fallen bandmate John Lennon in the song called All Those Years Ago. In October 1981, Ringo Starr released his 8th solo album called Stop and Smell the Roses. Originally, all four former Beatles were going to collaborate on it, but unfortunately, John Lennon was assassinated before the album went into production. So Paul McCartney and George Harrison performed, produced, and wrote songs on the album. Let's hear the song Rack My Brain, which George Harrison wrote for Ringo. Up and down old memory lane, rack my brain. Ringo Starr joined Paul McCartney on his successful album called Tug of War. And 2 short years later, Ringo appeared in Paul McCartney's film Give My Regards to Broad Street. He also recorded a few songs on the soundtrack album. All right, well, we're going to stop in the rock year 1984, and we're going to move ahead on our next video. So join us for Beatles reunions and collaborations part 2. And don't forget to keep on rocking. Bye now.